Hello, and welcome to the New London 30-Minute Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about our favorite horror movies.
So, personally, I like the 2018 Halloween movie better. And what is that face for? You seem like you don't agree.
It's not like a bad movie, obviously, because
Yeah.
I think it's nice that they brought Jamie Lee Curtis back because she was in the original Halloween. So I like that they brought her back. However, the direction's really good, obviously. I just think that it's it's kind of cheesy. It kind of brought us back to cheesy slasher, and that's not what I think of when I think about Halloween. I don't think about cheesy slashers. If I'm talking about cheesy slashers, I'll be watching Friday the 13th, okay? But, Halloween just kind of, the 2018 one felt more like a cheesy slasher. I don't know.
That makes sense. So, what about the 2007 one do you like better?
Okay, Rob Zombie, 2007 Halloween, definitely the best. I know I just said it seems like a cheesy slasher, the 2018 one, but I think that the 2007 one focused on having way better kills. One thing about Halloween is how good the kills are, you know? And so I feel like that one had the best kills and it had the best storyline. And even though it brought new characters in that we hadn't seen previously, it was still it was good because it was you kind of got thrown back into a timeline that hadn't been talked about for years. And so coming back into Halloween, it was nice, you know?
So, do you feel like to be a good horror movie, it depends on how good the kills are? Or are there certain aspects that make a horror movie a good horror movie?
I think horror movies are definitely about plots. I think if it has a good plot plus good kills, you've made the best horror movie that you could possibly make.
Yeah.
And I think that the 2007 Rob Zombie Halloween had the best one, personally.
Well, Rob Zombie makes good movies.
Rob Zombie makes really good movies.
He's more, if you compare him to other horror directors, he's definitely more violent. Can I say that? And gory, I guess.
Which I like.
Yeah.
I think he's demented, but you have to be demented in order to write horror movies and direct horror movies. You can't be perfectly sane in the mind.
No.
Making a movie about a killer who kills babysitters. You can't be perfectly sane oh yeah, and that's how that's going to happen. No, he's definitely demented. But in the best way possible, you know?
Yeah.
So I also have the 2017 It, not the original Stephen King one. But I think the original Stephen King it feels, I know it's old, but it feels old.
Yeah.
You know, it just feels very, very old.
It does.
And even the clown, Pennywise doesn't look scary in the old one, but in the 2017, oh my gosh, in that one, I think he looks terrifying.
Yeah.
If I was approached or I saw that, I'd be you know, I'd be scared.
Yeah. I definitely do feel like they did step up the scariness of it. And I feel like that's, if you're going to make a remake of a movie, you definitely have to step up the scariness of it.
Right.
Because if you just keep it the same, it's not really a remake. It is, but it's not a good one.
And I think they remade it really nicely. It still obviously had the aspects of the original, but they gave it its own twist and they modernized it for 2017. So it wasn't, I don't remember the year of the first It, but they modernized it and they made it enjoyable for people who had seen the first one. Maybe if you were still alive, I don't know how old that movie is, but if you were still alive and you decided, hey, I'm gonna watch this remake, it'd still be enjoyable for that time.
Yeah.
You know.
And
oh, go ahead.
I don't know, you've got to have, and I feel like some horror movies, if you make remakes of them, there's not really differences. I feel like some directors keep them along the same lines as the originals, but my personal opinion is if you remake movies, remake them better,
Right.
and make them more interesting and just funner. I don't
Funner?
know. Well, okay.
Wow.
Not
Grammar.
funner. I don't know what word to use, but
More
like,
fun. Is
yeah,
technically the-
yeah.
But yeah, and I think they accomplished that. I think they made the 17. I think they made it so it was a remake, and it wasn't like it had the aspects, obviously, like I said, of the original, but it was it still felt like its own movie. Like even if you hadn't seen the original, you could
Yeah.
come in here, watch this movie, and be like, "Whoa, Pennywise, he in the sewer," you know, and it's still scary, right?
And definitely keep, like, with Halloween, there's multiple movies,
So many, so many
and they're
movies.
making more.
And they're
but
making more.
They
Yay.
keep, each movie has something to do with the last one that they made. And that's, because if it's like a storyline, that makes sense.
Right.
Because if you haven't seen, like, the original and you watch, like, the other ones, obviously you wouldn't really know, like, what it's about. But I also feel like they keep it the same so you know what they're about.
Right.
So you kind of get, like, the hang of it, so you don't really have to watch the first one, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Look at
Okay.
you making sense. What do you have on your paper?
I did Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Ooh.
Love that movie.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I can't say the word massacre. I also sound stupid every time I say it. But it's definitely, I feel like it's a classic in its own sense. And like, even if you haven't seen it, I feel like you know what it's about,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah,
I feel like
you
it's,
probably know more about it than I do, so go ahead.
it's just a very popular movie, so it's good, you know. Couldn't tell you what year it was made, but whatever. It's still
Good.
good.
Didn't do her research.
I didn't. I've seen it multiple times. My mom loves horror movies. But
Is it like one of your like comfort movies? I feel like
Yes.
everybody has like a comfort
Yes.
horror film
yes.
where it's like, you know, that you could come back to this movie on repeat and it would still be good. And you'd still like look at it and you'd be like, oh, I love that.
I feel like that's one of these this is one of those movies that you could just go and like watch over and over again. I don't really feel like you could get tired of it.
Right. And it, like I said, it's a classic. I really like the direction of it actually, because I think it is an older-ish movie. I think it was
so.
like early 2000s.
Yeah.
I think I might be wrong on that. Don't fact check me. But I think I like the direction of it for it being such a like bloody, gory movie. It's like the direction of it's terrific. I don't know who directed it.
I don't know either. Could not tell
Nobody
ya.
did their research. Wow.
Nope.
On the line of like classics and stuff, I have Scream. I think the original 1996 Scream is one of the best horror movies. And while it does kind of lean into that cheesy slasher, it's still like good. I know.
Yeah.
And it's obviously one of the things that all the Scream movies had was having somebody who was well known in the beginning of the film get killed off. And in that one, it was Drew Barrymore. And I don't know if you guys know this, but I love Drew Barrymore. I think she's so versatile. I think she's amazing. And I think that she did so good in that opening scene that it kind of just like sets the tone for the movie.
Yeah.
When it first starts, you don't know what you're getting yourself into, you know? It's like, what am I really watching here? Scream. Oh, what's going on? And then it's like, it's Drew Barrymore and she's on the phone with this killer man. And he's like, oh, what's your favorite scary movie? And I think that first of all, is such an iconic line. I think that it kind of, it laid a baseline for a lot of horror movies that followed after it. And I think Scream, like, started a lot of, like, good horror movies.
Yeah.
1996, not a lot of horror movies going on. And then this movie comes out, and here's this killer. Here's this little bit of a storyline. Here's all these great slashes, all these great kills. And then it just kind of was a line after that. Scream started, founded, and fathered all horror movies, I think. And I think if you are going to talk about your favorite horror movie, you have to talk about Scream.
Yeah.
You know?
And I definitely Scream is a classic, and it's a really good movie. And I feel like movies that were, not all movies, but some movies that were made like back in like the 90s or like, you know, that around that like era aren't really like good. or like the direction of the movie just it's cheesy and it's not really
Right.
horror. But definitely, you know, you can tell they put a lot of thought into like when they made Scream, they really like planned it out. And I think that's just what makes it better because it makes sense and you kind of get like where it's going.
Right. And I could definitely understand why somebody would argue that Scream isn't necessarily a horror movie. And it's definitely more of like a thriller slasher kind of vibe. And I can understand exactly why you say that because it really is. It's like a slasher thing. But it also, I don't know, I think it's the storyline mostly. And we've been, count how many times we say storyline in this video. But I think storyline is what was really big there. Because there were still so many movies that followed after it. Did they did they change the killer every single time? Yes. I think the original film with it being Sydney, I think that's her name.
Yeah.
It being Billy Loomis, her boyfriend, and everything. I think that was like a really big like plot twist. You know, nobody expected him to be the killer. Nobody was like, oh, it's her boyfriend behind that mask. We had so many ideas. We were like, it's Dewey. I still think it was Dewey. I'm so sorry to tell you guys. I know that it's not, but I still think it is because I think that's the one that makes the most sense. But yeah, Scream was like a big founder of like horror movies. And does it still kind of fit into the category of cheesy slasher? Yes. I think it's right like neck and neck with Friday the 13th. Because it's like, it's one of those, like, if you hear the name of that, you're going to automatically know what you're like seeing. It's a classic. But it's also kind of a cheesy slasher. But I do love that movie. I will say that.
Yes.
Fan favorite.
10 out of 10 recommend.
10 out of 10 definitely recommend.
Yes.
What else do you have?
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Go ahead.
That movie, okay. If you look at classic horror, well, not like old classic, but you know, like along the lines of just horror movies in general, I feel like Nightmare on Elm Street kind of took a different turn with how they made their movie, and they just did a different approach of how he like killed people, and it was kind of just not. It wasn't like the normal way you would usually see.
Right. I think it's the fact that there wasn't just a person that was behind a mask being the killer. I think it was a big part of it being like, this man is a dream killer.
Yeah.
Like, if you fall asleep, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And I think that instills a whole different kind of fear into people. Like, I remember the first time I ever watched Nightmare on Elm Street, I, like, couldn't sleep. I was like, I don't want to fall asleep. I don't want Freddy Krueger to come get me, please. And are you talking about, like, the original Nightmare on Elm Street, or are you talking about, like, Wes Craven's? Because there's a long line of Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I think there's, like, 10, maybe less, but that's still quite a bit for a movie series, you know?
My goodness.
A lot of movies.
A lot of movies.
I think those are not the worst kind of horror movies, but also kind of the worst kind of horror movies when you have so many movies.
Yeah.
Where it's like you have the original storyline and then you have like a sequel. Okay, cool. We can stop now.
Yeah.
But then they're like, oh, here's another one and another one and another one. Now we're not going to touch this series for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then we're going to come back and we're going to do it again.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, why? And I think Halloween was one of the big ones that was like that because it was in like the 60s or something was the first one.
Yeah.
And then they had a sequel. And they had, I think, a few more. And then they stopped and didn't touch it. And then they came in and Rob Zombie was like, 2007, we're going to do it again. And then he got a sequel to that one too in 2008 or 2009, one of those. And then they didn't touch it for like 10 years. And then they came back and they made another Halloween. And now they're still making more.
Yes.
And it's like, I love Halloween. Don't get me wrong. But it's like it's never ending.
Yeah.
It's like we're never going to see a true ending to this. But that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street. But I think Nightmare on Elm Street did the same thing. Because I think there's a 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street where they kind of brought it back after not touching it for a while. They brought it back. And I think that one actually kind of sucked. I did not like the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street. I think I'm more of a Wes Craven's New Nightmare kind of gal.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I think it's just, I don't know. I think the 2010 one, I didn't like the direction of it. I think one big thing about that movie was that they did a lot of dark shadows.
Yeah.
And it was like, it's one of those that's kind of hard to watch to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you.
Right.
And I do think that there's a certain amount of movies and like horror movies in a series that you do until they start getting like bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, you know, the first movie is like almost always the best because it's classic.
Always.
Just, you know, and then you have a sequel, as you said. You know, that one's good, but it's not, you know, it's a little
I think a
iffy.
lot of movie sequels are really iffy.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of movies out here that have sequels that should not have sequels.
Yeah.
And, I hate when I find out that they're making a sequel, like, years later. I hate when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm like, bro, this movie ended 20 years ago and we had a great ending. Why do we need a sequel?
Yeah.
Like, I understand maybe a remake, but I think a sequel is pushing it for a lot of things. Okay. We can't
Okay.
say like.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. And I also don't really enjoy
Ooh.
when they do take a break for like 10 years
Is it like?
and come back and make another one.
Mm-hmm.
I feel as though it's not very smart. Well, okay. It depends on how you make the movie.
Right.
Because some sequels or remakes are complete trash.
Oh, yeah.
But if you
There's a lot of remakes out here that are garbage.
but if you make them correctly, you can make them somewhat tolerable.
And I think that making remakes is a very scary thing to do as a director, because you have to appeal to the original audience of that film. You can't just like completely remake something. It has to have the original aspects, of course, but it also needs to have your own feel to it.
Yeah.
Because if you do the same movie, nobody's going to enjoy that. Nobody wants to watch the same movie 20 years later.
Yeah.
But it's also like you don't want to change so much about it that you have the original audience angry. But you also want to change it enough so that the new audience can still enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so making remakes is a very edgy thing to do. I would be terrified if somebody told me that they wanted me to make a remake of something. I'd be like, ooh, don't leave me out of that. But yeah, I think Nightmare on Elm Street is one of the ones that kind of teeters the totter there.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said that. You said you've never seen Sinister.
No, I've never have.
Okay, Sinister. I think Sinister is one of the best horror movies that like exists on this planet, and it's because it's like we said earlier. There's the killers that are behind the mask. It's a person that's just behind the mask, and they just kill people, you know. And then with Sinister, they don't have a mask. They don't have a necessary person. It's kind of like this demon man who's controlling these kids that are killing their families. Like, that's crazy.
That sounds good.
I think that it was one of the ones that kind of changed the game. It was only 2012, and it actually did have a sequel, which sucked, by the way. Sinister 2 sucked. It was one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and it was because they tried to keep that same plot of the first one and give it a second one, but there was no need to. They didn't use any of the original characters or anything,
I hate when they do
and
that.
it was horrible. What does that mean?
Wrap it up. Welcome back to part 2. You can tell we've changed different clothes, and now we're talking about the movie Sinister.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it last time, but I don't remember what was said, so I'm just going to start over, basically. Sinister kind of changed the game of horror movies. It was only 2012, which is pretty recent, but it was still something that changed a masked killer that was chasing a bunch of teenagers to kids that are killing their families, like straight up their brothers, their sisters, their moms, their dads, like all of them just dead. And then this guy, he finds the videotapes of them, and it's like, that's what releases it. And I think it changed the game, honestly. I think it was one of those movies that really scared you. And it was like demonic, but it was good.
I've never seen it, but
You
it
haven't?
seems interesting.
Yeah, I tried to show you the trailer and it didn't work. So
Yeah, it seems very different from other movies because I feel like some like basic horror movies are all along the lines of like this one killer who's chasing after a bunch of like teens or like people, and then
keep saying like.
it's just changes.
Yeah. What else did you have on yours that we didn't talk about?
Wrong Turn.
I did see Wrong Turn. Talk about it. I haven't like seen it. I'm not the greatest, like I'm not a Wrong Turn fanatic, but go ahead,
It's
yeah.
I mean it's a good movie. It's definitely scary, and I feel like it's one of those movies that when you watch it, it will scare you, but it's also like a really good movie. It's like a really it's so scary. It's like good. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know
Well,
what I mean.
I hope a scary movie's scary. That is
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So they're the cannibal killers, right? And they're like inbred. They look so weird because they're so inbred. It's like literally like, they're so inbred. And
said that 3 times.
And they're like cannibal killers that like capture these people on the mountains and on the islands or wherever it was at, and they kill them. And I think a big part of that movie was trying to figure out like the backstory of them, because they do kind of give you a bit of insight on them, but ultimately it's like you don't know really what happened.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like it does scare you because it's like that can happen in real life because there's people out there that are just weird. I don't know.
Aggressively inbred?
Aggressively. Well, no, but like cannibals, you know what I mean? I didn't say aggressively inbred. You said that, but I mean, like, there's people out there that will do that.
Be inbred?
No, that are cannibals. I already said that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure there's definitely some aggressively inbred cannibals somewhere out here that are killing people and eating them on the daily.
Well, there have been serial killers that are cannibals.
There are.
That's what I mean. I'm not talking about people being inbred. I'm talking about them being cannibals.
I'm sure there's some serial killers that are inbred.
Well, probably.
Like, I'm sure that's happened. Moving on from the inbred cannibals. I got Annabelle Creation. That's the last one I have. I didn't put the original Annabelle because I don't think it's as good. I think the Creation one kind of brought kids back into it. The original Annabelle and like the Conjuring series, it's a whole ordeal that goes on with them. And they recently came out with a new Conjuring. I think it was the third one. Something like that. I didn't see it, but I know that it's a very long like storyline. That is, it's another one of those films that it's like different for each one, but they all tie into the same storyline. Like Annabelle and The Conjuring, they all go together. Like they're all the same storylines. And I think it was 2017. It was 2017, and I think it kind of, I just think it's scarier than the original Annabelle. And I remember the first time I watched it, I was like horrified. I was petrified. I did not want to go to bed. I didn't want to, it was one of those ones that like kind of sticks in my brain. And whenever I think about like any of my favorite scary movies, I think about that movie. And yeah, I sometimes mix it up with the original Annabelle, but deep down I know the truth, you know?
Yeah.
I know the truth. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
Have you seen Annabelle?
I don't think so.
Have you seen The Conjuring?
I think so.
Okay.
You get a little worried there for a second.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I was like,
I don't have a lot of free time.
yeah. If you haven't seen it, I really suggest that you do see it because it's really good. And yeah. There's also, I think The Conjuring kind of reminds me of The Boy a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's just because they're all about demonic possession. And I think that demonic possession horror movies are actually scary good. Because I feel like if you're not going to know if you're going to get possessed by a demon. You know?
No, they're just sneaky like that.
They're just sneaky.
You never know.
Sneaky little demons. And so you never know if it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's another fear that should be instilled with horror movies is like, you don't know if that's going to happen to you. And that's why like Scream and like Friday the 13th and like all of that, like those are scary because they're just killers in masks killing people which happens. Sorry to say it, guys, but it does happen. And I think demonic possession, while for most people it might not be scary, for people that are kind of unsure about things in the world, it is scary because you never know if you're going to get possessed by a demon, or if your sister's going to get possessed by a demon, or you wake up one day and your dog's possessed by a demon, and and now you're running for your life. Was that Cujo? The dog demon guy? Not guy,
the dog demon
obviously.
guy.
But the dog demon, the demon dog.
The demon dog.
He like killed people, didn't he? He like ate people.
I've never watched
he ate
it.
kids.
Oh.
But that movie's super old.
When was it made? Do you know? Like
Cujo?
years ago?
Years ago.
Years ago.
I think my
Weren't even-
mom remembers that movie coming out. My mom's 42. So
Just like out your mom there. Jeez.
sorry, Monique, don't come at me for that one. What was your last one?
Get Out.
I'm gonna be real with you. I haven't seen Get Out. I haven't been able to fully watch it for the reason that it's like a racially background kind of movie, and I hate watching movies that are like that. And I feel like sometimes bringing like real world problems into horror films, that's enough to make me not want to watch it, just because it's like I don't want to think about that, you know? Especially being, I'm gonna say it, Black. It's like seeing like racially motivated movies and stuff like that. They always scare me,
Yeah.
and I can't watch movies like that. But was it good? I've heard it's really good.
It's definitely a different. I can't remember what movie we were talking about yesterday, but it's like different from the other horror movies.
I think
was
the
good.
direction of it, I heard like the direction of it and everything was really good. And I think with a lot of horror movies, it's like they don't focus more on like the kills and stuff. They focus more on the direction of it, like Midsummer. Have you seen Midsummer?
Yes.
Midsummer is really good. And I think it's the direction of it that makes it so enticing. It's like you see all these crazy camera angles and everything going on, and that's what entices you to the film. It is like over 2 hours long, so it did feel like a stretch, I will say, but it was good because of the direction of it. And I've also, what was the name of the guy that directed Get Out? I can't think of his name right now. I can't think of his name. Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele. He also directed Us, didn't he? That was
Yeah.
another one that he did. And I did see Us. Us was insane. It was another one that was like directed super well. That it was like, here's some good kills, but also here's some crazy camera angles and some crazy stuff that we're gonna do to make you sit here and watch this movie and be like, what just happened? I think Jordan Peele's a great director. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so mad at myself. I could not think of his name. I'm so mad at myself.
You're just gonna be bashing yourself.
It was like on the tip of my tongue. I just couldn't think of it right off the top of my head. Do you have anything else?
I do agree with you. He is a very good director, and I feel like people. Are those the only movies he's directed, or has he?
I'm sure he's done others, but those
Done
are the ones
others?
that are
Those are-
off the top of the dome. It's like Get Out.
Those are
and
like the
Us.
most popular ones.
Yeah.
He definitely did take a different direction, and I feel like that's what made the movie so good, because it's not like a original horror movie.
So what I'm getting is, in conclusion, if you direct the movie well, we like it. Kills, bad or good, good direction always tops horrible kills. Okay?
Yes.
Can we just wrap it up? All right.
Cool.
Well, I think that's all we've got. Thank you guys for tuning in.